Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, we've been showing these maps quite a bit in every one of these forecast videos. We're looking over on the left at the last 30 days in terms of the departure from normal precipitation. And what we've been seeing is that parts of Washington, Oregon, and northern Idaho have really seen a bit of a drier bias. We've even seen a little bit of drought move into that area, while much of the rest of the Intermountain West, much of California, has been wetter than average. And if you come over here to the basin average snow water content, it's this same region that's still showing a bit of a deficit in our basin average snow water content, while the rest of the western United States is really in major surplus in terms of snowfall for this winter. Well, what I want to do is I want to teach you a little bit about the flow pattern that gets us here, so that together we can be watching for these patterns that set us up for wet or for dry. And what I want to introduce you to here is something called the East Pacific Oscillation. Now, what all this is we're looking here at the pattern, the flow of the atmosphere, by comparing what's going on in the East Pacific, so that butts up against the West Coast, and over Alaska. And essentially, when things are in the negative phase, where we have been there much of mid-March and we're going to stay there all the way into the beginning of April, this tends to feature a big ridge sitting over Alaska at times. And that changes where the moisture flows into the West Coast. So let me show you what the first 23-24 days of March have looked like. So this is a composite map of every day of March up to this point. And we've really seen this. A trough sitting here in the Aleutian Islands, building into a ridge over western Canada and Alaska that digs into a trough just off the coast of California and then pushes into a ridge over the southeast. Now that flow pattern is called a high over low pattern. And that tends to mean California is wet and the Pacific Northwest is dry. And that's kind of what we've seen here. We've seen this high over low pattern, and that's really kind of controlled our weather systems. Now this is a little different look. What we're looking at now is what we call the zonal wind. That is the west to east wind. We're looking at its strength. Now because of that, we've seen the flow of the jet stream want to do this. And it's been weaker here in parts of the Northwest. It's been weaker in parts of Western Canada. It's instead targeted California more often than it's targeted the Northwest. That's what March has given us so far. Now, we're about to transition into April, so we need to learn what the patterns need to look like for April, for it to be wet for the Northwest, where we've seen some drier conditions, or where it could be possibly dry. So I went back and I found the wettest Aprils on record. I'm going to specifically talk about the Northwest because that's where we're seeing deficits here. And what we see is we need to get a trough sitting right over the Northwest, right in here, such that the flow of the atmosphere comes right around that and just brings in quite a bit of moisture. We can see that by looking at the wind speeds here. See where they're fastest? Really strong Pacific jet comes right into the West Coast. That is a pattern that gets us set up with a lot of atmospheric rivers, and when that happens, we tend to be quite wet. You can imagine what the opposite looks like. These are the driest Aprils. We tend to have, again, look, high over low pattern. And that ridge there sets up shop, brings in warmer conditions, but also much drier conditions. So that is what the flow pattern looks like when we're dry, and this is what the wind speeds look like. See how weak they are? We need strong winds off the West Coast to bring in the moisture. If they're weaker than average, we don't get it. Instead, the flow moves more north-south rather than west to east. Okay. What do we have right now? Well, let me animate for you the current flow of the atmosphere, looking at this system sitting right here in the Pacific that's taken aim on the West Coast over the last 24 to 36 hours. There it is. There's a deep coastal low sitting here, and it is funneling quite a bit of moisture in through Northern California, coming right into this part of the Pacific Northwest. Now, to the north of it, there is a ridge, and we want to show you that ridge here because this is the pattern we've currently been in. Look, the high over low pattern. But things will be evolving and changing, and we need to figure out what's going on because the pattern is about to make a bit of a shift. We've been in this negative EPO, that big ridge over Alaska, and these troughs hitting California, missing parts of Washington and Oregon. Well, as I play forward, watch the pattern evolve. We're going to be seeing that to start this week, really Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday, that coastal low is quite pesky with this high over low flow, and it's going to be just kind of bringing in rounds of precipitation from Northern California all the way through Idaho. By the time we get into Thursday, watch this. Wave breaks over Alaska, and that trough joins it and goes right into the central United States. Now, the good news for the Northwest is this ridge builds back into place, and that's going to mean a warm and quite pleasant, possibly drier, much drier than average weekend, while the eastern part of the United States deals with this trough and cooler weather. But watch what happens beyond this. You're going to see the strength of the Alaskan ridge waning with time as we progress into April. So the first week of April is right here. And look at the strength of and size of the trough by the time I get out to April 4th and 5th, coming right here across the Pacific. Now that is a much different look in terms of the flow of the atmosphere. Now we're building a ridge here. We got a trough that's sitting over the Hudson Bay, and that allows the jet stream in the Pacific to possibly get quite strong and really take aim on the whole of the Pacific Northwest. So we're going to be getting out of this crazy kind of high over low pattern into a much more direct pattern out of the Pacific. We got to take a look at what that means in terms of precipitation. Near term first, and we'll do the long term in a second. Here we go. We kind of can start off seeing here that beginning in the morning on Tuesday, you're going to see a lot of precipitation coming in from this direction, kind of taking aim on this area to start things off. So as we play this forward, as we get out to Wednesday, so Tuesday into Wednesday, there it is. You see the moisture coming in. This is really taking aim in Northern California by Wednesday morning to Wednesday midday. And a lot of that moisture is moving right here across Nevada, Oregon, getting into parts of Idaho and Montana, really taking aim on the Northern Rockies and the Sawtooth Mountains here. Now, with time, this is now Thursday, early Thursday morning. We see that low is finally coming on shore. So this is going to be a wet week for this region right in through here as we get through, at least through Friday. But watch what happens after we get past Friday. You see, once we get past Friday, that system now moves into the Central Plains. And for early Saturday morning through Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday midday, Sunday evening, it won't be probably until we get into Monday morning that our next system takes aim on parts of Oregon and Washington. So very pleasant, dry, possibly much warmer than average weekend. But you see that by the time I get into early next week, our next coastal low feature comes on shore, and there it is, Monday into Tuesday, spreading quite a bit of precipitation across the Pacific Northwest, kind of leaving California out of this for at least a little while here. Here we are into Wednesday, April 3rd, getting into April 4th, and 5th as that next system moves across. Now, we're going to show you the longer term here in a few seconds, but I want you to see in the near term over the next week what we're talking about in terms of total accumulated precipitation. Snow first. Remember I told you the target area was right in through here, the Sierra Nevada picking up quite a bit. We can see part of Oregon picking up some snow here, not major amounts, but really it's going to be this region in through here, the Sawtooth into the northern Rockies, possibly picking up anywhere between 6 and maybe 10 to 12 inches of snowfall. In terms of precipitation, liquid equivalent, we can see that because Northern California is kind of in the target here with the first couple of systems through this week, they're wet, but again, see how it moves right here into parts of Oregon, into Idaho and Montana. What you see up here, this is coming through with the system that starts off early next week. So this is really Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, moving into Oregon and Washington. Now, if we slide down to California, we can look at specific precipitation amounts just to kind of add some detail here. Overall, Northern California coastal regions picking up between 3/4 of an inch up to 2.5 inches, depending on where the heaviest bands really set up. The mountains here picking up possibly, you can see up here some of the amounts getting up to maybe 2 inches of liquid equivalent. That could equate, as you see here in the Sierra Nevadas, at much higher elevations here, between 10 and 30 inches of snow, additional snowpack. So we're just adding on to a great snowpack we've got currently. But look at week 2. At week 2, the jet stream gets much stronger, and we see wetter anomalies here for a lot of the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. So while Southern California is going to stay dry for quite some time, we can see that Northern California all the way through Washington, once we get into week 2, looks to be much wetter. That's what happens when we break down that high over low pattern and bring in a strong Pacific jet. What about temperatures here? Well, as we animate this forward, let's just see. Basically, every time we see some cooler anomalies, it's clouds and precipitation. We don't see the bitterly cold air that we had been seeing throughout February and early March, though. Okay, so once we get toward the end of the weekend, remember this is when that system finally gets on shore, so it kind of plagues the coastal regions into Idaho, early in the week, but then it finally moves on shore here, and that's why we see the cooler temperatures with the precipitation, with the cloud cover by the time we get into Thursday. But that slides into the Central Plains, and watch the weekend warm up. In parts of the West Coast, getting into Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, that colder air slides in the middle part of the country, And look at these temperatures on Saturday and Sunday. Much warmer than average. Looks to be a really pleasant and nice weekend. But remember, the Pacific jet sets back up again. And by the time we get that precip coming in early next week, things go back much closer to climatological averages here. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. Now, to finish this video, I want to just give you kind of a tease here about what I'm going to be talking about in my long-range forecast video, which will come out tomorrow morning. And one of the features we're watching by April 15th is this. Coming off of the Pacific, really coming off of parts of Japan, I'm going to expect to see a pretty strong jet stream throughout much of this middle part of April. But it looks as though the models want to hint into a split flow pattern again over the Pacific. Now that typically means warmer but drier conditions by mid-April here in the Northwest, while things stay cool over the Southwest and very active in the Central Plains as things build into a ridge. So we're going to have to give a full diagnosis of what this pattern means as we progress into April here, but certainly it's quite active in the near term. With that though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next Western Regional Forecast video that'll come out on Friday morning. In the meantime, have a great week and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.